Throughout the Galactic Republic's clone army, there's one unit that stands above the rest, the elite commando unit known as Delta Squad. As the Clone Wars raged on, Delta Squad was deployed on mission after mission, the next being more dangerous than the last, yet despite their work only becoming more frequent and difficult, they never failed, able to accomplish what entire platoons of normal clones, or even what other commandos, weren't able to. Which is exactly why I've chosen them to be put up against the galaxy's greatest hunters, a species comprised of only the most skilled warriors to have ever existed. The Predators represent overwhelming physical strength and tactical skill, even being able to hunt what's considered to be the perfect organism. But before we really get started, if you guys like content like this, I have plenty of other similar videos already up on my channel, as well as others dropping in the near future. So don't forget to drop a like if you end up enjoying the video, but with the intro stuff out of the way, let's get into it.
You son of a bitch.
While the hypothetical narrative reasons for these videos don't really matter much, as they're really just excuses to talk about fun matchups or situations, I figured it would be cool to talk about how and where the situation could happen, assuming Star Wars and the Predator franchise shared the same universe. The Yautja are always looking for powerful prey to hunt, and throughout history humans have had many encounters with the alien species. With Delta Squad's long history of completed missions and extremely high reputation, this could easily catch the attention of a Yautja looking for his next trophy. The setting I chose for the hunt to take place is towards the end of Republic Commando on the Wookiee jungle world of Kashyyyk. This really serves two purposes, the first being that Delta Squad are at their peak during this time when it comes to combat experience, since this part of the campaign takes place during the end of the Clone Wars. The second is that the jungle is an optimal setting for any hunter, and it's a nice callback to the original film. However, for the sake of being fair to Delta Squad, we're gonna make it so that there aren't any droids around during this time, because it would be pretty unfair if Delta had to not only deal with a Predator, but a bunch of super battle droids and other enemies as well. So we have our narrative reasons for this matchup as well as our setting, but which Yautja will Delta Squad be going up against? Well, I've decided to pick 3 specific Predators to throw up against the Commandos. The win conditions for both sides will be to eliminate the other. So for the Predator, he has to eliminate every member of Delta Squad for it to be considered a victory. The first Predator we have to talk about is the iconic jungle hunter from the original film, who was shown having access to the plasma caster, wrist blades, invisibility cloak, vocal mimicry, and the gauntlet self-destruct device, with all of those being very standard Yautja equipment. Due to his equipment and the fact that he had been hunting alone in the Guatemalan jungles for some time, it's likely he was blooded, though as far as I know there's no 100% confirmation of his rank. For those who may be unfamiliar, the Yautja species is comprised of many ranks that are typically based off age and combat ability. The higher the rank of the Yautja, the more equipment they have access to, and overall determining their hunting and combat skill. The way a Yautja becomes blooded is usually by killing their first xenomorph or other high-value target, and is seen as a step into adulthood, which means if we assume the jungle hunter is blooded, which seems likely, then he's probably a young adult and, while competent for sure, isn't even close to one of the best of his race, as blooded is a pretty significantly low rank. But a low rank in Yautja culture doesn't really mean a whole lot because they have insanely long lifespans. Being able to live for hundreds or sometimes even thousands of years, a Yautja reaches physical maturity around 50 or 60 years old and is stated to be the equivalent of a 18 or 19-year-old human. They're also trained in combat and hunting pretty much from the time they can walk, meaning a newly blooded Predator can have decades of experience under his belt. Similarly, the same goes for Delta Squad, having been raised in the facilities on Commando and being trained from birth to be top-tier combatants. And unlike normal troopers, were personally trained by a Mandalorian, which is the case for all Commando units. However, even among Commandos, Delta Squad is special, with their very first deployment on Geonosis being a mission Commando Unit Omega Squad failed. Delta Squad is comprised of 4 members, the first being Boss, the team's leader and strongest tactician, second in command Fixer, who's the team's computer systems specialist, followed by Scorch, the demolition expert and my personal GOAT, and finally Sev, the team's best marksman.
Geonosian.
3-8, my scanners show an explosion.
That's affirmative. Subject terminated.
All of them wield the DC-17 blaster rifle, which is standard issue for all commandos. And while it might seem basic, this weapon's very special. The frame is highly customizable and supports 2 other configurations. The sniper attachment is able to blow chunks of armor off super battle droids, or even Geonosians' entire torsos off. The other configuration, the grenade launcher attachment, not only makes light work of super battle droids, but can even damage spider droids as well. Delta Squad carries around a few different grenade types, including the standard thermal detonator, EMP, and sonic grenades, and of course we also have to talk about their armor. The Katarn class armor is pretty impressive, being notably multiple degrees better than your standard clone armor. It's primarily made of reinforced duraplast, designed for resisting blaster fire and extreme heat or cold, and featuring deflector shields. The armor also features retractable wrist-mounted vibroblades for close encounters, and a HUD built into the visor which displays all squad members' health status and location if they're nearby, which this is canon by the way, not just a concession made for gameplay. Finally, with all the cards down on the table, how would Delta Squad fare against the Jungle Hunter? Assuming he stalks the team while cloaked like he did to Duchess Squad, he would likely get spotted relatively quickly. While the cloak is definitely impressive, we know it's not complete invisibility, with multiple members of Dutch's team being able to see him even while he's standing still. And yeah, Dutch's team were elite soldiers, but they were elite soldiers from 1987, which isn't exactly comparable in any way to not only an advanced, futuristic, highly trained clone army, but an elite commando squad which upon landing on the battlefield are treated like Spartans by normal troopers. Hell, even comparing them to other commandos is doing them a disservice. Not to mention cloaking tech exists within the Star Wars universe already, both for ships and infantry such as the Imperial Shadow Troopers, though during the Clone Wars cloaking tech seems to be used mostly for spacecraft rather than infantry, so there's a chance it could still catch them off guard. The Plasma Caster shouldn't be anything too special, since the Hunter is going up against a squad that's very familiar with plasma-based weapons, not to mention wearing armor specifically designed to withstand plasma damage, including having a deflector shield to dissipate high-temperature projectiles, being able to withstand both blaster fire and more powerful ordnance like SBD wrist rockets. Not only would a Plasma Caster shot likely do very little damage to any member of Delta Squad, but as soon as it's fired, the Hunter loses the element of surprise and gives away his position. This can be made even worse if it's raining like how it was during the mission on Kashyyyk, because we've seen on multiple occasions that water interferes with Yautja cloaking tech. Not to mention if Delta gets a read on his general position, an EMP grenade would immediately eliminate all of the Hunter's electronics, cloaking, Plasma Caster, everything.
Grenade. Celebrate to the moon. Take that.
Good take, Lee.
To me, it seems like Delta Squad definitely has the long-range advantage. Cloaking tech is nothing new to them, and they're wearing armor designed to counter weapons like the Plasma Caster. So what about the wrist blades? In the comics, these are shown to be made from an extremely tough metal, and one swipe can cleave through the side of a tank. Along with most Predators approaching 8 feet tall and weighing over 500 pounds, they easily have the height, weight, and strength advantage. However, the Commando's wrist blades are also impressive, vibrating at high frequencies to cut through even droid armor. Unfortunately for the Commandos, it seems they're only equipped with one, while Predators typically have wrist blades on both arms, not to mention the overwhelming strength advantage. Though Delta Squad is experienced fighting foes bigger or more skilled than them, such as the Trandoshan elites, though we've never seen a hand-to-hand fight between a Commando and elite before. Delta Squad were capable of fighting 2 Magna Guards, which is extremely impressive, because they're shown to be relative in blade combat to Jedi, with 2 of them typically posing a real threat. So it's still very possible any member, especially Sev, could win a hand-to-hand encounter with the Hunter, though I do think it's unlikely. Or, maybe Sev does him like a Gotham thug, I don't know. The main problem for the Hunter is getting any members of Delta alone, because Delta Squad absolutely will not be giving him the faith of a 1v1. If it becomes a 2v1, Scorch and Sev are kinda twinsies, so they're gonna hit the most crisp dap up the Republic's ever seen then sleep him with the Atlanta Special. If they hear a fight going on, or notice on their visor that one of their squad mates is in trouble, it'll become a 4v1 for the Predator, in which case he becomes prey real fast. Maybe the Hunter can use vocal mimicry to lure Scorch or Sev away from the others, but honestly I just don't see it happening. No way Boss is letting them stray too far, especially if he knows they're being hunted.
Well done,
Stay
squad.
focused, Deltas. We need to get to the top and blow that ship.
Most Yautja, including the Jungle Hunter, also barely wear any armor, wearing about as much clothes as your average Twitch thought, so 1 or 2 shots from any of Delta's weapons and it's pretty much over. Overall, I don't really see a way the Jungle Hunter can win this, which, to be fair, he couldn't even beat a squad from the fucking 80s, so a squad that's better trained and has technology more advanced than his own makes this a bit of a cakewalk. His physical advantages, while they would help in a 1v1, making that 1v1 happen is extremely difficult, in which case, unlike the Plasma Caster, Delta's weapons would be far more effective, and even then you might be able to make the argument for a Delta Squad member winning that 1v1 anyway. He wouldn't even be able to use his suicide bomb because, unlike Dutch, Delta fights aliens all of the time. They're not just going to stand over him while he types on his gauntlet, they're going to execute him immediately. I don't really see a situation where the Jungle Hunter wins. But what about the City Hunter? I'm gonna be real, even though I love the City Hunter and think he's really cool, he's a bit of a fraud and might actually be even harder to argue for than the Jungle Hunter. While sharing the same rank, he does have more equipment than his jungle counterpart, having everything previously listed, while also having access to the spear gun, combi stick, net gun, and smart disc. The combi stick is actually no joke, on multiple occasions being shown capable of easily piercing through multiple walls, and the same goes for the smart disc. The net gun is particularly useful for capturing targets, though I don't think any of this new equipment gives the City Hunter enough of an edge to actually win. The net gun could be very useful if the commandos didn't all have vibro blades capable of cutting it, which we've seen the smart disc do. Though the combi stick and smart disc can both be thrown as projectiles, and if one of them lands it could do lethal damage, but an EMP would likely disable most of his gear, which would include the smart disc. The problem is the City Hunter lost a 1v1 with an LA cop in 1997 in his own crib, by the way. He got his ass beat on home court while his homies watched, and side tangent real quick, because this is insane. Imagine waking up in hell watching the kill cam just to see your homies were watching you get cooked like disappointed parents. If it were me, you better pray I don't win that fight, because if I do, you're next, buddy. But regardless, I don't see any way he does anything to the commandos who all have superior armor, tech, and weapons than him. So once again, I think the commandos take this pretty easily as well. Our next Predator, unlike the last two, is an elite. Wolf was capable of casually soloing dozens of xenomorphs and going toe-to-toe with a Predalien. His equipment includes everything that's been mentioned for the last two Predators, with the addition of a plasma pistol, whip, shuriken, laser mines, and power punch glove. This is where things start getting very debatable for Delta Squad. The jump in skill from a blooded Predator to an elite can be massive. The Jungle and City Hunters both struggled with humans, sometimes even in a 1v1, while Wolf views groups of superhuman Xenos as fodder. He's also tactically much smarter, whereas the other two relied heavily on cloaking, and once they were spotted it mostly became a normal fight. Wolf used laser mines to seal off exits and flush Xenos down a narrow passage towards him, and used the impact of the caster to launch Xenos into the laser mines. You might be able to argue that just like the mines in Republic Commando, that Delta would be able to disarm Wolf's laser mines, but just because they can deactivate technology they're familiar with, doesn't mean they can do the same for an alien species they've never encountered. But if you want to give that to them, that's fine too. The shuriken are also particularly deadly, able to cleave through a xenomorph like tissue paper, then slice a human in two and pin them to the wall. Not to mention having multiple plasma weapons at once. I think if Wolf makes every optimal decision, he could pull out a victory, but it would be extremely high diff. It's the same case for Delta Squad. Any unoptimal decision can lead to death, and they really have to be at the top of their game. For both sides, it would likely be high diff, but I'm still leaning towards Delta team squeezing out the W. Delta can still use EMPs to disable most of Wolf's equipment. They probably wouldn't be fooled by vocal mimicry and led away from their other squad mates. And Wolf, having very little armor, won't be able to take more than a few shots from the Commandos, while on the other hand, they could probably take a few hits from his plasma weapons, and if you want to stretch it a bit, from his melee weapons as well. Not to mention they could possibly disable his laser mines. It could really go either way with Wolf, but I still lean towards Delta Squad. Now, once you start getting into elder predators like Ahab from the comics, who was capable of killing an engineer, that's when I think the favor starts shifting more towards the Yautja. In conclusion, it really depends on the predator. Anything lower than an elite stands very little chance in taking out Delta Squad, but once you get to elites or higher, things start becoming much more debatable. The reason I chose the 3 that I did is because they're 3 of the most recognizable, and Wolf is really the only time we get to see an elite in action on screen. A huge shout out and thank you goes to our first channel member, Sith Lord 906. You're awesome and your support is greatly appreciated. And if you guys would like to support a small creator, consider hitting the join button down below. If even half of my subs donated just $1 a month, I could do this full time, hire an editor, and make bigger and longer videos for you guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to tell me what you think about this matchup down in the comments below. And with all of that being said, I'll see you guys next time.